Hi everyone, today we are going to present our proposed project, Fractional CO2 Lasers, a unique tool to assist with microfracture. To begin with, I would like to share a Pixar pitch for our project. And once upon a time, there was a skilled surgeon named Dr. Elias facing the challenge of improving cartilage repair procedures amidst rising injuries. Every day she tirelessly sought a solution driven by the need to reduce patient suffering and improve outcomes. One day, inspired by a dermatologist, Dr. Elias pioneered the use of fractional CO2 laser treatment for microfracture assistance, offering a precise and less invasive solution. Because of that, the patients experienced faster recoveries, minor post-operative pain, and recovered joint function, until finally this advanced technique became a standard practice, ensuring that every patient who walked through Dr. Eli's door received the optimal care for their joint injuries.
Yeah, so I think to understand how this device fits in, we'll start with a current understanding of the treatments that are available and how our device fits in. So we wanted to essentially introduce an improvement to the current microfracture treatment because it typically is considered as one of the initial starting points for addressing those individuals who present with a significant cartilage injury that may not respond to conservative treatments like rest or any at-home or over-the-counter treatments as well. And since the microfracture procedure has been in use for the better part of a few decades, 20 or 30 years or so, it has been shown to be relatively safe overall, in addition to being an inexpensive procedure that doesn't rely solely on some of the more expensive biological options that are available today to treat these injuries. But like other or most surgical procedures, there are concerns specifically for microfracture in terms of the underlying traumatic nature and the often inaccuracy of the orthopedic instruments that are utilized to create these channels within the bone, coupled with the fact that the quality of the fibrous cartilage that produced is not always the highest quality for the patient at the end. And lastly, due to the amount of time and the number of instruments that are used during this procedure, infection is also an underlying concern. So next slide. So to address some of these disadvantages, our idea is to propose a carbon dioxide fractional laser to be used as part of this microfracture procedure. And this idea basically stems from some early feasibility work that was done by Randolph et al., which showed some promising results in utilizing a fractional laser in an in vivo animal model, where it was used to create sort of microchannels within the outer layer of the bone as part of the microfracture technique. And while this is very much a feasibility study and still requires additional investigation, I think we feel comfortable in moving forward or into investigational phases. Our laser essentially utilizes the same principles as those lasers that are typically used for cosmetic or dermatology purposes, in that the lasers improve or are used for skin rejuvenation, but our laser would utilize a much more powerful one in order to create channels within the outer layer of the bone. So the hope is that this laser will simplify the amount of instrumentation needed to complete the procedure while ultimately producing comparable clinical results. So, next slide. So for this, our estimation, and from the graph that you'll see at the top right, the cartilage repair industry is quite significant and expected to grow over the next 5 years in the future. And we're estimating that from the approximately 100,000 cartilage repair procedures that we might be able to capture some percentage, and we're aiming for a total of 12% penetration within that number, with a potential domestic sale of about 60 laser units for approximately 60 hospitals within the state of Ohio to begin with. So in terms of pricing overall, we've priced it at about $20,000 per system, which sort of falls in between for capital equipment, a little bit more expensive than the dermatological lasers, but also significantly less than capital equipment such as CT or MR machines, which start at anywhere from 60 to 70 on up. So in addition to the underlying sale of the machine at first, we also plan to utilize maintenance contracts and after sales services to maintain profitability as well.
So there are some similar laser medical surgical treatments out there for patients, and this is what makes up the IP landscape of our proposed technology. The first one we'll talk about is a patent that focuses on providing real-time measurement feedback during surgical operation, which is what we also need to provide in our device, but their patent doesn't go too much into detail about their specific laser technology. And the second one we have here is a laser-assisted machining of bone. This is more of a method for targeting and then attracting and machining of bone. This is more of a benchtop practice rather than for a surgical application. And then the third one we have is a system for laser ablation surgery. This is a very wide-ranging patent, which includes a surgical tracking system and goes into very fine detail about the specific surgical robot aspect of their technology. And this one happens to be filed by Google, which is somewhat concerning having them in a similar space. But we believe our product will have a different purpose and action. And overall, none of these really talk about using a fractional CO2 laser for microfracturing purposes. So we were pretty confident that we're not infringing on any IP, but we'll obviously keep monitoring as new tech emerges along with ours. And then for our regulatory assessment, our initial approach will be submitting our device as a Class 2 device under the 510(k) pre-market notification pathway. We believe that our device will fall under the product code GX, which includes CO2 lasers that are intended for use in general surgery and dermatology, as we mentioned before. And our submission will prove that our device is hopefully substantially equivalent to legally marketed predicate devices. However, we are prepared to go through the Class 3 medical device pathway. Since we are proposing a novel intended use of our device, this is definitely a possible scenario, and it will require us to submit a pre-market approval, which is much lengthier process. And we'll have to be prepared to conduct clinical trials under an investigational device exemption. This IDE will allow the device to be used in clinical studies, which will support our PMA application. And then once we submit our PMA approval, or once we receive PMA approval, we can begin selling our device. And so definitely the Class 3 device length is much more longer than Class 2. So we're hoping we can get in the Class 2, but we are prepared for both.
And at last, about our re-improvement strategy, we want to be sure that our laser designed for articular cartilage repair will be covered with relevant CPT codes, such as 29879 for knee procedures and microfracture techniques, and also 29867 for knee arthroscopy with microfracture techniques. So these codes provide a framework for reimbursement and pricing here. And in regards of the coverage, we hope that by ensuring our device aligns with established reimbursement codes, increases its eligibility for coverage by government agencies like Medicare or Medicaid, as well as some other private insurance companies. And for at last, about our payment, we hope that the payment rates vary based on patient's insurance type and surgical settings. Reimbursement for code 29879, for instance, can be substantial, but is also influenced by factors such as Medicare or private insurance coverage and the surgical facilities type. And hospitals can anticipate reimbursement of roughly $2,000 per procedure under the Medicare. And below is our team constructed by Mac Camardo, Travis, Katiana, and Jingxing Chen. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me get it down and see if it